hands of their victims had to be cut off. These hands became the currency for cruelty, stacked in baskets, smoked over fires to preserve them for counting. Villages were touched and survivors were whipped with chicote, a brutal whip made from hippopotamus hide that tore flesh with every lash. People were imprisoned, starved, or executed in public to set an example. It was not uncommon for both hands of a living child to be cut off for punishment for their parents who failed to meet the rubber cutter. So, the Congo did not submit quietly. The resistance fled across the territory. The Batetela rebellion in 1895 saw soldiers, once conscripted into the First Republic, mutiny and killed their colonial officers. In Ikwate, Chief Mulume Niame led coordinated strikes against rubber collection. In Kassier, women smuggled men out of work camps, destroyed gathered rubber, and hid food stored for soldiers. This act of defiance was met with scorched earth campaigns. Villagers burned to the ground, crops destroyed, and entire communities scattered or slaughtered. The brutality extended beyond violence. Diseases took what bullets and blade did not. African sleeping sickness ravaged the Congo River Basin, killing at least 500,000 people in 1901 alone. Chickenpox broke out and swine influenza swept through weakened population. Starvation became a constant, not because the land could not provide, but because the people were forced to spend their days deep in the jungle, tapping rubber vines instead of famine. In many districts, birth rates collapsed while generations were wiped out. The rest of the world did not react instantly. Leopold's propaganda machine was just too powerful. School books painted him as a civilizing force. Newspaper printed illustrations of the king leading grateful Africans towards modernity. And at the 1879 Brussels International Exposition, an entire human zoo of Congolese people were put on display to promote Belgium's civilizing mission. Crowds flocked to see it, never realizing or never caring that these were the very people whose villages were being bled dry. The truth began to crack through because of individuals who refused to stay silent. George Washington Williams, an African-American journalist, visited the Congo in 1890 and wrote an open letter accusing Leopold of crimes against humanity. Decades before that phrase was coined, E.D. Morel, a shipping clerk in Liverpool, noticed that ships bound for the Congo carried only guns and chains, while returning carried nothing but wealth. Partnering with Roger Casement, a British diplomat who documented the atrocity in a government report, Morel founded the Congo's Reform Association. Leopold in the hall of the British Parliament and in American newspapers, forcing the question, could the so-called civilized world tolerate such barbarity? Even the United States had been the first nation to recognize Leopold's claims. In 1885 began to distance itself. President Theodore Roosevelt, under pressure from missionaries and African-American leaders, condemned Leopold's rule. International outrage swelled until in 1808 the Belgian parliament stripped Leopold of his personal colony. But the system he built, forced labors, extraction, and racial domination remained in place under direct Belgian rule until 1960. Leopold's crimes were not an isolated case. The German genocide of the Herero and Nama in Namibia, Britain's crushing of the Mau Mau in Kenya, and France's brutal campaign in Algeria all form part of the colonial record. But Leopold's toe, that million dead, entire cities shattered, remains one of the deadliest in modern history, and yet, unlike Hitler, his name is not universally spat in disgust. That is partly because Belgium spent decades teaching its children a sanitized version of history. The Congo Free State came as a noble mission, and profit it yielded was presented as the fruit of Belgium's industriousness. Statues of Leopold stood proudly in cities, squares. Plagues described him as Builder's King, and with No mention of the blood that brought the bricks. For many Belgians, the marble and bronze became background scenery, heritage without context. But the cracks had widened. A global wave of Black Lives Matter protests, sparked by killing of George Floyd, has ignited scrutiny of colonial legacies. Leopold's statue had been defaced, toppled, or removed in cities like Ghent and Antwerp. Supporters of their removal argued that public monuments are honors, not neutral historical markers, and that honoring Leopold sends a message that genocide can be forgotten. Opponents claim that removing them is erasing history, but critics respond that history lives in books and museums, not in uncritical public glorification. The Congo sovereign did not end with Leopold's death. When independence came in 1960, Belgium left behind a hollowed-out state, almost no trained administrators, no functional political institutions, and an economy still dependent on foreign exploitations. This power vacuum paved the way for decades of instability, from the assassination of Patrice Lumumba or Mobutu Sese Seko, 82-year-old kleptocracy. Even today, the pattern repeats. Congo's cobalt, coltan, and copper feed the global tech industry, but the profits flow towards while the people remains among the poorest in the world. Leopold's reign remains a textbook case of how national wealth can be built on foreign bones. The parks and palaces of Brussels, the art collections, the very images of Belgium as a modern European state, all are inextricably tied to the blood, sweat, and severed hands of millions of Congolese. The question Belgium faces is whether it can confront the truth without looking away. The debate over Leopold's legacy is not just about removing statues. It is about finally naming what happened. A genocide. In all but name. It is about facing the reality that for millions of Africans, Leopold was no builder, no civilizer, no king, only an architect of death. And it is about deciding whether in the 21st century we will continue to let comfort of selective memory outweigh the demands of justice. Thank you for joining us at ATN 360 on this other edition. See you on the next one.
Do you need more power, more control? Then you need VPS hosting from Hostinger. Say goodbye to server limitations and access more storage, more memory.